Welcome to Lawsuits and Lessons, a show where we're talking to entrepreneurs, business people, lawyers, just anyone who we know who's in the know. That makes sense. In the know, we know this in the know. And it's basically they're giving their insights. We're talking about AI, we're talking about networking, we're talking about legal matters. We're just talking. And I want to bring up my co host. I'm Steve Cooper, and my co host, which, if you look, he's got that beautiful view outside. And behind me, I'm in a closet. So he did well becoming a lawyer, and it's John Foggerholm. What's up, John?
What's up, Steve? That's a closet? I thought it was a hallway to the front door. That's what I always thought it was.
No, what it was it was originally a closet, and Joanne's stepfather passed away, and he made this into an office for her. So it was a closet, now it's an office, and you can see the picture of my mom. Now behind me, I have all these newspaper articles when I was writing for the Hamilton Gazette. So it's like my total egotistical thing. I have a bunch of you know pictures of me with their David Duchovny, and my article with Stephen Van Zandt. So it's an honor to me. I made my little man. It's not
An
a man
homage.
cave. It's a man closet. That's what it is. So anyway,
Yeah,
how are
yeah.
you been, man? It looks beautiful down there. Is it hot or what's going on?
I'm in Texas right now, and Texas is very much like Vegas weather, to make it easy to figure out for us West Coast natives. But yeah, it's great. Polite people, pretty decent weather if you like hot. Inexpensive real estate, no traffic, so it's always nice to get out of LA and come to Texas, at least where I am. I was just in LA, I just flew back from LA last Saturday, probably, yeah, Saturday. And man, just the energy drain from being in a city where you're just sitting in traffic and spending 2 hours to get, 20 miles is crazy.
Well, our guest today, he's a good friend of mine. He lives in the city. He actually lives in Philadelphia, John. So you can't give
I
me a
can't
hard
make
time.
fun of
He
him.
lives
He's
in
not a New
Philadelphia.
Jersey boy.
No, he lives in Philly, but he's from outside Philly, but he lives in Philly now. And he's a good friend of mine. And I met him through networking during the pandemic. He came to my networking group called Coffee with Cooper, and he left a very interesting career to become a photographer. He really started his creative spark going, and it's my friend John Cruise. What's up, John?
Thanks for having me, John. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you, John. And your last name, so it's pronounced Cruce?
Cruise, yeah, like juice.
Oh, okay. When I read it, I thought it was like Cruici or something like that, like something Italian, but I guess not, huh?
No, it is very Irish.
Okay. Well, you look more Irish than Italian, but who knows these days? I just saw a video with blonde hair, blue-eyed Filipinos speaking Tagalog, so I was like, wow, this is crazy.
So, John Cruz, I'll call you JC because there's two Johns. I've never called you JC. Tell us a little about your path to becoming a photographer because you were major like corporate. You were really involved.
I started college as an architecture major, and that's what I was thinking about doing at the time. It's a creative field. But at 17, 18, I wasn't like fully sure that I wanted to decide on what I wanted to be for the rest of my life. So after about 2 years, I switched schools, switched majors. I got a degree in business with a concentration in marketing because I figured that's flexible enough for me to like work, and then I'll figure it out when I get older, kind of deal. So I'll kick the can on decisions. So I got a job at Vanguard and I became a statistical analyst, and I analyzed internal processes and investor behavior and that kind of thing. But I miss being creative, so then I went to school at night. I finished my architecture degree because that's all right. Now I've made a decision. I'm going to go do that. The financial collapse happened. All of my architect friends from my first school, I'm hanging out with them. They're all laid off. Um, and I ended up moving over to the digital experience side of Vanguard, working, taking architecture with a different building material, as a friend of mine who convinced me to do it said, and worked on digital experiences for retirement platforms. So but when I was done architecture school, like I was doing that at night, I was working on projects on the weekend. I had all this new free time, and I had a camera for school projects. And then I just started wandering the city, just taking photos of like mostly street scenes and architecture stuff, skyline, buildings, things like that. And then I got into portraits, and portraits was like felt like a design process. It felt like a thing that I was solving. And so I started to get some traction online, and I was getting bored with what I was doing creatively. And so then in 2019, I decided to hang a shingle and do portraits full time.
Nice. When I think about architects, it's one of those professions that's romanticized. So I remember even being a college student going, wow, it'd be really cool to be an architect. I just think of sitting in a coffee shop drafting sketches and looking at skylines, but it's probably a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's like when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of pressure, and it's not as much pay as like some of the other fields with that much schooling. So yeah, it's one of those where it's yeah, I'm glad for the process that I did. I'm glad that I got the degree. I'm glad I learned everything I did. But yeah, I don't think that I would make it as a full-time architect. I think it would drive me nuts eventually.
You started your photography business 2019, so you had a good year or so before the pandemic hit. And how did the pandemic affect your new business venture?
So it's funny. So that first year, given I have a background in marketing and business strategy and user experience design and branding, all that stuff. For that first year, I did all of the wrong things. I was my worst client. I made a logo, I made a website. None of it had a consistent theme. And so that first year, I was just kind of like spinning my tires. And at the end of that first year, I'm like, okay, I now know what I need to do. And then the pandemic hit. So I figured, all right, I got 2 weeks. Remember when if everybody stays inside for 2 weeks, we'll be good. So I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to figure out my whole brand strategy, that whole thing. And so I came out with it, a lot more clear about what I wanted to do. Um, but it was tough because like you couldn't really get in front of people. And so I did a lot more like, you know, business portraits, like headshots and things like that, because people were trying to get a better online presence. So that kept me afloat. But, you know, if I didn't have Steve and I met through his networking event. The Zoom networking really got my business, back on track.
What was your thought? What was going through your mind? And I always wonder because with entrepreneurs, people go out on their own. You're taking a big leap, and me and John have talked about this before. And Mike Beretta says like taking a leap without a parachute. But what was your process? You were leaving a job where you knew, even though you were unhappy, you knew you had that check. And photography, it's not like it's a one in a million. There's a bunch of photographers out there. There's all different kinds. And I know you don't want to do weddings. You don't want to do that kind of schlocky stuff. So what was going through your mind? Did you have some trepidation? Were you nervous? Were you thinking, I might just eat shit and then I have to go back to my old job? Or what was going through your mind when you first took those steps to go out on your own?
Yeah, I figured with the diversity of my background, if necessary, I could find a job. Like it was like one of those things where it was like, I was confident enough that like, if I couldn't get this thing off the ground, I could go do I could go do design somewhere. I could do analytics somewhere. I could do something until I figured it out again. Like I figured there was enough background that I could walk into and get a job at that time. Now I don't know. It's not so much. Yeah. If things fall apart now, like, it sounds like everybody's having a tough time now, but, back then, in 2019, it was not a thing where I thought it would be a hard thing for me to get a different job.
That's interesting. So tell us about your business and who's your client base and where do they come from and whatever else you think is interesting.
So almost all of my clientele comes through referrals. So either people I meet or people who know me. And it's because my process for photography is kind of inverted from a lot of other photographers where mine is a design process. I'm a trained designer. That's where I go. So I start with a problem we need to solve and then figure out a solution. And so mine is rooted in storytelling, just like from like marketing. We have a product, we got to tell a story in order to sell it. I like to turn my portraits into stories. So it's like I'm going to sit down with a person and figure out their story. And I like to say with clients, like when they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, let's figure out the words and then we'll figure out how to make the image. And so I have three main lines of business. I have for families, I do artwork. So it's like the whole group, it's the kids, it's the pets, it's whatever, but we're going to make something big. It's going to be displayed in their house. And it's going to be the story of them. High school seniors is a new vertical that I've been building up. It's a big market in like where you are now, like Texas, it's a huge deal. And in the Midwest, but out here on the East Coast, it's not a big deal yet. But with social media, kids are not necessarily as regional as they used to be. So you're starting to see needs come up a little bit differently. So it's a vertical I'm propping up now. And then the third is branding, and branding is for businesses. So I don't do like the assembly line headshots. It's more of like a business needs to tell a story about them in a visual way. So I sit down with them, and I've expanded to not just the photos, but also brand consulting. So I'll give them an entire distribution strategy, social strategy. What is the story that they want repeated? So that's another like line of business that goes along with that storytelling.
Steve had mentioned that you don't do weddings, and I know that in some circles, maybe I don't know if they're looked down upon or not, but I always thought anything wedding related is number one profitable, but weddings are beautiful and fun, and I would love to have to do something where every weekend I'm at a wedding. Do you do weddings? And if you don't, is there a reason why you don't?
I do not do weddings. I did one event once. I
Uh-huh.
actually don't like attending weddings. I don't find them fun. So
Oh,
it's
really?
like,
Okay.
well,
I love
I don't want to
weddings.
spend my time going out. But I did one event once, and like really, when you're doing something like that, you are just basically trying to evaluate the scene and capture a moment like that you happen to see passing by. And that's just not how my brain thinks. Like I want to construct the moment. So I want to make everything orchestrated. I want to design a solution rather than see if it happens. Um, and the other thing I like to joke with people, like when you're that, you are a fly on somebody else's wall. I am entirely too much main character syndrome for that. Like I have to be, if I'm not involved, I don't want to be there.
John didn't mention that he also he shoots for a magazine called Philly Current, which was funny when I was doing that late night show, the Mike Jarek show. I was in their green room, which was just a lobby, but with no coffee or anything. Not like the Ellen show in their green room had all these great snacks. And I'm just taking the shit. I'm like, oh, I've never seen these. I'm taking like 47 snacks. I'm walking out with a backpack. Because you do that when you're on a set and you take those Nature Valley bars, you throw them in your thing. But I was going through the magazine, Philly Currents, because John had said he shot for it. And I opened it up and I saw his article, his photo he took. It was about for a stand-up comedian who has she's dying, right?
I want to say cystic fibrosis, but I could be wrong.
But yeah, so I saw that. So he does that too. So it's funny how, when you're a photographer, you can spread your seed everywhere.
But in that sense, it's still within the same lane that I do because I'm taking their story. So when I get an assignment, I call them up, tell me your story. We're going to figure out how to make some images. So for Kirsten, it was, she's a comedian, but she's also like a horror nut and very into the macabre, like leaning into like the death story. And so we did it in the upstairs of Tattooed Moms, if you know, on South Street. It's very like graffiti and stickers and just very dark and moody. And so that was kind of like, this is where we're going to create those images.
Well, that's why I thought of weddings. Not to harp on weddings, but you said, you keep saying it's a story. It's a story, like you're creating the story, and it just seems like that's what, especially brides want. They want to tell the story of how they met, how the engagement happened, how the planning went, the story of what they think their life is going to be, So it just seemed like a good fit. But
Yeah, no, and all of those things would fit. They just, none of those happen on the wedding day because the wedding day is about the wedding day. It's about none of the things you mentioned. Like if they called me and said, "Hey, I want to tell the story," like if a couple called me and said, "We want to tell the story about the day we met, and we want that cemented forever," we could go do that. But I'm not coming to your wedding
got you. Okay.
because that story's not going to get told. Because now you're in a wedding dress and he's in a tux, and you're never going to wear that again.
Yeah, we have Joanne's wedding dress in storage right now. And mine, I had the powder blue tux. So, no.
So you just returned it, right?
Thing about John is, John's a consummate networker. And I always like to talk about because I think you know, as he works with referrals, he has to be out. And I've been out with events of John. John always comes to my event and does these great things. But tell us, John, what for your business and for any entrepreneur, why networking is so important because it plays a big part for a lot of us. Like John Fagerholm, yours, of course, you are very specialized, your niche. Now, in your other parts, you do business with, people you've met networking. But John Cruice, why is it so important for what you do to network? Because once again, it's exhausting. You can be out a lot, but why is it so important?
So for me, because my process and my product is hyper niche, it has to be explained. I can do a certain amount on social media. I can do a certain amount on my website. I can do a certain amount like into the ether, but is more impactful when I talk to somebody about what it is I do and how I could do that for them. And so for me, it's just about because I'm a naturally curious person. It's why I do what I do. I want to hear other people's stories and then figure out the puzzle of how do I visualize that. Networking is kind of a stage in my process anyway, because I'm just talking to people and learning about them. And then if I could do something for them, I do. So that's really what it is for me. Like if I were to do weddings, like for instance, right? Weddings are when they're needed. Like like somebody's getting married, they need a photographer for that day, and there are websites specifically for bridal services, and you meet network with event planners and things like that to where you get your referrals. So it's a different animal. Like you're going to Google, I need a photographer for this. For what I do, people may not need think that they need it until they hear me talk about it. So it's like one of those things where it has to come out of my mouth.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Steve, back in the day, I networked a lot. That was kind of how you get your first clients is by meeting people. At least that's the way it was for me. But nowadays, not so much. I don't do very much, and it feels like a young man's game anyway. It really takes a lot of energy. So John, I salute you because I was going out 3 nights a week and exhausted back in my early 30s. So nowadays, no way.
I go through periods, and I'm going through one right now where I'm like looking at the calendar and I'm trying to be strategic about where I go because it does. You go through burnout stages where you're just like, there was an event I went to. This is end of last year, and around because of the way Christmas fell, everybody did their holiday networking like the exact same week. Like it just crammed it in there, and so I was daisy chaining these events together. And I think I went to one where I'm just like, I would think I was there for 15 minutes. And I'm like, I don't want to be here and I'm just going to be annoyed. So I'm just going to leave before I upset somebody. Like
Yeah, that used to be great. I used to love, when December rolled around and all the networking was around, Christmas stuff. It was just such a great time to network. So that was always my favorite time of year to network. Those were just before everyone flies out of LA to go visit their family wherever they're from, where they're really from. So, yeah, I loved it, yeah, back then.
Now, I want to bring something up because John's very involved in John Cruice is very involved on LinkedIn, posts a lot, gets stuff going. And I know he doesn't use you were talking about AI. Now, John Parker Holmes fascinated by AI. Like I could just sit there, I could ask John a question about AI and he could go on for hours. Now, for you in your business and for LinkedIn and stuff like that, what's your take on AI? Because John uses it also as a formula to make more efficient for his office. But you come from a different where you work with influencers, people who want to be influencers. You work with people's stories. So, what's your take on AI? Do you like it, and do you think it will ever affect photography, and does it help you at all?
it's important to define what we mean when we say AI, right? AI is this large blanket term that means a million different tools that could be applied in a million different places. So I use AI in my business, right? So Photoshop, Adobe has AI tools in as part of editing. Like, I need to get rid of this. I need to extend this. I need to do this. It's getting better. When they first launched it, it was kind of cool, but not great. It's getting better. You have to play with it a little bit, but it's definitely a lot easier than me trying to like manually do some of this stuff. Um, and I use like for research, I'll do like some like Claude. I'll do, but my issue is the misuse of this. It's the abuse of tools where it's like, oh, this is now going to make my life easier because I'm going to write content with this. And now you have a bunch of people saying like, oh, there's an M dash, it's clearly AI, and they don't understand how any of this works. Large language models just repeat what it's seen in the world. The reason why they show M dashes is because real writers, like I was for a while, actually use M dashes. Like that's why they scraped real writers, and they're just repeating the averages. Um, and so when you get that, and that's part of my concern is that people are using it thinking it's good enough, and it's not. It's just you're not going to have extraordinary. You're not going to have breakthroughs. You're going to have because it's a powerful tool if used correctly. I just don't trust that everybody's going to use it correctly.
Yeah, and I agree. And what you said about it may not be good enough, it seems like it's gonna usher in the dark ages of creativity. You know what I mean? Where people are no longer sitting and thinking about what they want to do and how they want to do it. And they just um, speak it and then some machine makes it appear, and then they look at that and say, good enough, right? Versus, in the old days when you're writing a script per se, and then every word matters, and every basically an outline of who the characters are, and then you build it into a story. All that stuff is potentially going to be gone. And for us, we don't use it to write, because I can tell when lawyers are using it to write, and I don't like that. There's certain things that are always the same anyway. So, for example, in a particular motion, when you're spelling out to the court all the codes that you're using or whatever, it's all the same anyway. So that I don't mind, just pull from this and add it here. But when you're actually writing persuasively, it takes a little bit of human finesse, and I don't think that AI quite captures it. I don't think AI is persuasive.
Somebody made this point that was really interesting. I was reading an article. It's like AI right now. It's not to say it's not going to change as they evolve. It's not good at creating brand new. Like when you think about law, like you think about like, oh, we're going to do this innovative thing based upon this. We're going to triangulate this couple pieces of case law and come up with something new out of it. Like AI doesn't necessarily know how to do that, right? It can repeat what's been done, but like to come up with something clever and new, that's not its jam. That's not where its power is. You still need humans to like think outside of the norm because we're not trained to necessarily stay in the box. When you were talking about the script, it reminded me, it's a story I tell. My second year of architecture, so every week in architecture school and studio, you come in, you bring your drawings, put them up on the wall, and then you got to like just basically sell what you're working on. And a classmate of mine put his drawings up on the wall, like I forget what the project was. And I remember the professor saying, "Why did you do this?" And he said, "Oh, because I thought it looked cool." And he said, "You're in second year studio, because it looks cool is no longer a reason to have any lines on a page. Like every line needs to have a justification. And so when you come back next week, you have to have a justification for every line." And that's something that like professionals do. AI doesn't do that. Like part of it is just repeating patterns, but then there's also the black box where it can't necessarily tell you why it did it. And it comes out as it's good enough, but you can't say, why is every pixel on this image? Why is every line in this, written paragraph? Like it doesn't necessarily know. And that's something that like professionals know.
Well, with creativity, it's funny you talk about that. There's a show with Lisa Kudrow on HBO called The Comeback, and it was on, and then it came back, and then whatever, and it's like a reality show. She's an ex sitcom star. Well, this season, the last season, she gets a job, and it's on a AI written sitcom. So what's funny is there's no showrunner, there's no writing staff. It's just this guy who was like the computer guy and some other guy are working it. And when they didn't get a joke that worked, they would throw in the idea, and all these jokes would spit out. But like one guy's like, I did that joke on a show back in like 1985.
Yeah.
So it's like with the creativity, they're pulling, like they always say, if you're going to do a book, if you're going to do a book with cartoons or like a children's book, don't use AI, because they're going to pull from different other kids' books and stuff like that. And you might end up getting sued because it might be part of a book that's copyrighted. So it's very interesting, AI for the creative part, because I see it on LinkedIn. You can tell when people, I'm tired of these stories where they're just like, it's like 87 lines and it's a spot. And then I did this, and, I thought I was going to be late to this party, but oh my God, I'm so glad I went. And you've talked to this person, and this person can't put a sentence together. And there's no way in hell they're writing. Because me, I've optioned a script. I know how to write. I write jokes.
Yeah.
My shit's all run on. I got to check it. So you see these people and you have a conversation, and that's the problem. And I think, like you guys both said, you're not going for excellence. You're going good enough. And for these people, I think what happens a lot is they get on LinkedIn and they want to be influencers. They don't understand that, you just can't, like with some of these podcasters, you can't just do 3 podcasts and be good. It takes work. And so they sit there and they settle and they go, I'm just going to write this thing. And they're pulling the wool over a bunch of eyes, because a lot of people, or it's all the people that are friends with them, are sitting there going, oh yeah, we're going to like that. Or, oh, this was so wonderful. It's like when you get someone who's hideous, like a guy or girl on Facebook, and people go, ooh, gorgeous. No, they aren't.
Well, they
You're
say that to
lying.
the girls, not the guys. They're honest with the guys, right? It's
True, that's true.
Well, Steve, it's funny you mention like writing and comedy because I this morning, like I was at a coffee meetup and there was a couple of us talking about like just social media. And the one guy said he saw a video recently of a comic saying, and I'm curious about your perspective on this. His thing is young comics coming up don't know, like they're working for the algorithm and they don't know how to work rooms anymore and they're just not funny. He said they're working for social media. So that's why you see all the crowd work stuff. He goes, they're not even writing acts anymore. And he said I'm worried about the next generation of comedy, like actually going to the club and putting in the hours and figuring out when the inflection is funny and when it's not, figuring out when this word is funny and when it's not, and like work it out until it works. And he said, he goes, I don't think that they're doing that anymore. I think they are gearing their whole set to clips on social media.
Well, they're going for to get likes. They're going to get likes. They're getting the comments, and the one, they say people don't want to. They'll say we don't want to do our material because it wastes it for the club. Well, you're not headlining anywhere. Like, all my comics I used to know would love to do Carson, and they go, "Well, your 7 minutes is gone." They go, "I don't give a shit. I did Carson." If you're good, you can come up with that time. And I think it's a new generation. Like John, you've talked about younger people that you work with. They have a different philosophy. They sit there and it's brutal you have to love it, man. You play clubs in front of 5 people. But now it'll disappear. Those people like that. Because remember, everyone said Vine. Remember how Vine was so big? And then all of a sudden, boom, Vine's gone. And someone's like, holy crap, I bought a Lamborghini because I had 1 million followers. Now, how can I afford a Lamborghini working at Wendy's? So it's one of those things that happens. So, John, what's your thing with the employees, younger employees? Because you work with all ages.
yeah, just the biggest thing, especially for lawyering, is number one, the writing. The writing is just different. It's not. I mean, just the amount of times I email a young attorney and say, "Hey, I wanna review this for content, not for grammar." Like, so there's a certain way attorneys talk in writing, and you don't want it for clients, but you want it for the court. There's a certain amount of legalese that the court is expecting. And so just to write as if you're talking to your buddy, I don't know why that's a thing. It doesn't make sense to me to have that kind of education. And write like that. The second thing is, and the most important to me, is analysis. The whole analyzing things, just making those connections, it's very hard. It's like you're teaching them how to analyze when that's what law school used to be for. Those are two interesting things with the new kids. And also, you know technology is creating different problems, and I think I haven't seen the AI problems yet, simply because it's just new enough where the youngest attorneys I have didn't go through school with AI. So they're trying to use it, but they didn't go to school with it. So it hasn't become a problem yet. But I see what the problem is going to be because I see what my clients are doing. So John, what you were saying about your professor saying every line matters, I just had this exact conversation about a client sending me something with AI and saying, "Okay, I understand what AI is saying, but it doesn't have the right context, and it's just trying to spit an answer out to you, right? The context you gave it was the wrong analysis to start with." Right? So you gave it your story, and then it spit out all this code and said, "Yes, you can do this." I'm telling you, you can't do it because the chain of evidence is not. You don't understand the chain of evidence. You think this guy did this to influence this guy who committed fraud, but where's your evidence that this guy did anything? You just think it. And so you told the AI, this guy also committed fraud because they did this thing together. But so it gave you this answer and told you to do this thing this way, but I'm telling you it can't be done.
The AI isn't a trained attorney to say, "Do you have evidence of that statement?" Like there's no follow up. It's just like, "Okay, I assume you're right. I'm going to answer your question."
That's right. And it's so off the mark that, and the client is stuck on, this isn't fair. There's got to be a way to do this. I said, yeah, maybe there's a way, but we got to do it the right way. I can't just start filing motions, that are incorrect motions because Chat GPT said it could be done, and and then to kind of explain. I think that explanation is what's going to happen in probably not even 10 years, in 5 years, where I'm going, wait, hold on a second. You've just jumped to a conclusion. That's not how we do it. We take evidence and we say, here are the facts and here's the evidence to back it up. Not, hey, it feels like this guy did something because they know each other and blah blah blah. It just is. I think it's going to create a mess for new attorneys, the ones that are growing up with AI. That's just my opinion, but we'll see.
No, I agree, and it reminds me of like in my analytics days, we used to say garbage in, garbage out, right? If the numbers are bad, yeah, it doesn't matter what statistics I perform on it, you're going to get a bad result. If we don't understand the operational definition of each piece of data and we know what that's counting exactly, I can't analyze what's going on. And the thing is, but back then it was happening, but it was very manual. So we could walk our way backwards and figure out where did the problem happen. My concern with AI is things are happening so quickly, and then you can't see the work being done, that like we're going to end up with just in this system of like we're just applying it so quickly that we have bad answers. We don't know how to fact check it, and then working way backwards. Like we have to put safeguards in place, and that's one of the things. Like I don't know if you're seeing this like in your business, but like there are very few industries. There's no safeguards around AI globally. Industries are not putting up many guardrails because they're still trying to figure it out. Most like if C-suite people are like, well, it's going to create efficiencies because like that's what I was told. So I can replace a bunch of people, like implement it, implement it, implement it. But like, where are the where are the backups just in case we get a wrong answer? Like, how do we get back? What's the process for that? Did we design that process? Like, I don't think all of that work has been laid yet. We're just trying to jump to a result.
So the two problems I'm finding. So most of the AI that I'm using is in the business, not really in the lawyering, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't think it's in a place where you can really use it for lawyering. But in the business side, the marketing, the intake, um, the collections, like all of these things, you could put it in. So at first, everybody was very concerned, like, oh, am I losing my job? This does collections. No, but I want you to learn how to use it because it's going to make your job easier. So part of the struggle was figuring out what technology fits where and what it'll do. But the bigger problem is getting people to use it. They don't want to use it. They're like, okay, I don't want to spend the 2 hours to learn how to do this and then spend the next year with it being more efficient. They'd rather not take the time to learn and just be less efficient. So part of the struggle is twisting arms to make them learn how to use the stuff that uh, is going to make their job easier. Because instead of hiring an assistant for the collections person, why don't we have technology where we don't have to hire people? You can use the technology and do the equivalent of 4 people, right? So yeah, those are the struggles
I don't have any struggles with the AI. I don't mean I use it occasionally. I mean, for writing, I write. I don't do it. But I think like for John, you had mentioned
with
you
with
know
a
with
pencil, with a pencil and a
yeah,
and a
exactly.
and a
And so
lined.
I do, I write. Okay, I will say something. I wrote a kid's book that I'm trying to get published, but I'm writing a second one. And this is how I wrote it. And this is Guys on the Truth. Page one, it's kids' books. It's 32 pages. Page two, and then you get some of the dudes wrong. Page two in the back, and that's how I do it because I sit there and even with jokes when I go, when I perform, I take a notebook on stage with me. I write everything down, and it's just I don't want to type it in. I don't. It's just the thing. But I mean, with AI, I mean, as you're right, John. It will be helpful. Both the Johns are right. It's going to be helpful. But right now, there it as you both said, it doesn't want you to do awesome. It just wants you to do okay. But then people look at it, what they're writing, and they think this is great. When you can, as I said, you can see right through it. A LinkedIn post, you know it. There's always a check, a check, a check, a thumbs up, some bullshit like a other emoji, and it says, and it's all spaced the same. And no one writes like that. I mean, when you think about it, you read a book, no good writer writes space, I mean, dialogue they do, but it's just funny. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I'm just thinking, what's it going to do for entrepreneurs? Is it going to take away an entrepreneur's creativity? Like if he's sitting there thinking, I have this idea, I have an idea for, whatever, a scooter that goes backwards and whatever. Are they, instead of them thinking out the process, are they just going to type it in and go, oh, I have a new product? What do you think? Something like that will happen?
I think yes, it'll definitely happen, but I don't think it's going to be wholesale. Like I think you're going to see. I don't think that those people are going to succeed long term. I think that they're going to be in there. We're going to see them. It's kind of like, I mean, I I said to somebody about a year ago, like this feels like '99. Like if you guys remember, like the everybody's a website now. Like everybody's a digital thing, and those that worked changed industry, and those that didn't, we've never heard from again. And so I think that we're in a similar phase where people are going to try to shortcut it, and that's humanity. This isn't a new thing. People are going to try to cut a corner and get there faster. The people who put in the systems in place and use it deliberately for certain things to push their business forward, they're going to succeed. But it's the people who are like, I hope that AI replaces my brain. We're not going to hear from them after a while. We're going to see a lot of their social media posts for a bit, and then they're not going to do anything with it.
That's interesting that you say that, John, because, Steve and I have talked about this many times. And I've said that this feels like, I didn't say 99, I said 96 because uh, 94 is when I was a freshman in college, was the first time I even saw an email. And I was like, oh, what is this? Right. They assign you one at the university and they go, here's how you use it. Right. And I was like, oh, this is great. But I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. I was like, just other university students back and forth, right? And then right around 96, everyone's has a desktop. Everyone's looking at the World Wide Web. Everyone is, on AOL. Uh, and so I think about where we are with AI kind of like that. And it makes me think, okay, what worked in 96 and what didn't work in 96, and I should be thinking along those lines. I researched law firms from those days, like, that's around the time LegalZoom came out, and LegalZoom's not a law firm, but, law products and law firms and what changed with law services and law firms that I like, what law firms did well with it and which ones didn't, and so that I look at stuff like that now, but I think that's the way people should be looking at stuff. I was listening to the Jeff Bezos story and how he got started, and he was basically like you. He was an analyst at one of the big hedge funds or whatever it was, and he said, "I want an internet business," and then he just did the research to see what would be the easiest thing to sell on the internet. It turned out to be books, and that's how it all started, right? So I think along those lines with AI. Okay, well, what's the easiest thing for AI to create and sell? And then I haven't found it yet, but that's the way I'm thinking. In the space of law, not anything in the world, but just in law.
Yeah, I don't know law that well to like be able to but yeah, there are certain things where it's like, oh, this could be a very powerful tool. Like think about like logistics, right? Like making sure that the packages are like monitoring that is a full-time job. You could see AI doing that, like being able to see where things are, timing them out. Like I think about like process flows that I used to deal with, right? Where are the bottlenecks showing up? Like point it out to me. No, let's figure it out. Like AI could identify those things a lot faster than I could, as long as the numbers going into them are confident. So there's definitely it is computing power and it is just so fast. It's just we just need to make sure we're being smart. Like we need to be intelligent before applying artificial intelligence. Like we can't be stupid and do it. Like you can't do both.
Well, what I tell the people in that work under me is just think of it like uh, AI and all of these bots that can be created are your employees, but you are the head of this department, and you still have to supervise and run and direct and do all of these things. You're just not directing humans anymore. You're directing these little things. And so you're not speaking to it like you speak to a human. You're on a keyboard, right? Or you're using voice to text or whatever it is that you're using.
So, question just off the topic, real quick. We talk about entrepreneurs a lot. And John, when you were young, John Cruise, what did you envision yourself doing? Did you ever think that years later you'd be branching out on your own, taking that jump to entrepreneurship, running a business? Well, I mean, what was your plan as a kid? Because me and John always ask, was there a defining moment? Do you think entrepreneurs are born or they're made? What do you think about that?
I never really had I mean, I changed schools, changed majors. Like it's not like I had anything figured out, like even, at 17, 18. Um, like I just think that I'm very surprised I lasted in corporate as long as I did because it's just not my jam. Like I don't like having like that much bureaucracy in my world, like the way I think about things. So I didn't necessarily plan on living there. But I always like to create. And so I always thought that I was going to create something. There was a period of time where I thought, I'm going to launch an advertising firm. Like that was like a thing that was in my head when I switched to business. I'm like, I'm going to launch an advertising firm at some point. And then, you get a job, you start making money. You're like, all right, well, I'll kick the can on that. I think some people just like to do things their own way and see what happens. They're less risk averse, like just naturally. But I also think it's like sometimes out of need. Like somebody looks at a thing and says, nobody's going to do it. Maybe I should. And that's not necessarily that they were born into, but they look at a situation and just go, the opportunity presented itself. And I guess I'm going to be the one that does it. So I think that there's some that do that. I think most, it's like an inherent, just I'm willing to go because I've worked with people who they just wanted to come in, do the things on the checklist, and go home, and that was just never my thing. Like I mean, and there's people who that they were very happy just doing that, sit at the desk, do the job, go home, and then go through life. I just was never that way.
Yeah, that's interesting. And another question we ask every week is what are the skill sets that you think make a good entrepreneur? I'll give you the few just that everyone says, and I'm sure you'll say it too. Well, one of the few is hard work, right? Everyone always says, yeah, you've got to be a hard worker, right? So that's one of them. But what are your thoughts on the skill sets that make a good entrepreneur?
So I think that one of the things, and this is like when I tell people, like when people are you know, kind of playing with the idea, the thing that you love that you're going to make a business out of, know it's going to be about 20% of your business. And then 80% is going to be a bunch of other stuff, right? That like you just don't get to, for the at least the early parts, you don't get to delegate that stuff. Like, I just like was updating my website. I was just updating some marketing. Like these are things that like, when I was at Vanguard, like I would just like, I would do the high level, like this is what I needed to do. And I had a guy who coded it and a guy who did the visuals and then, a whole team that would put it together and then come back and then we would go over it together and I'd make some changes. And like that was now with me, it's just me. I just have to sit in front of my computer and make a website, right? That's just the thing that I have to do now. So there's, you have to accept the fact that there's going to be, a lot of the job is not doing the thing, I don't I don't photograph every day. It's it's going to networking events. It's doing social media posts. It's doing it. It's a bunch of other stuff that goes into running a business. Doing invoices. Like I don't want to do that, but like it is what it is. Like that's how you make money.
And that's a good point because when you really start taking off, if you've already got a good business and it's already working itself, when you really start taking off is when you start hiring people to take that stuff away from you. When I first started out of my bedroom, it's I would spend a month getting business and then collect all these retainers and have this money, and then I would spend the next month doing the work, right? And so then but then it was just this up and down thing, and then the more people I added to do all of these things, uh the more my income went up because now I was free to do, like you said, what you like. And what I really like is clients. I like the business development. That's what I do. And I don't mind the legal stuff, but But there's lots of people that can do the legal stuff. You know, the business development, it's a little bit harder for someone else to develop my business, right? Not that there aren't people that could do business development, but it's just not the same, right? You know, the other thing about that too is so and I'll just use collections because it's an easy department. But the collections department, they'll go, "Oh, it's so hard to collect." And then I say, "Well, you know, I used to do that along with doing, you know, this other stuff, all this here. So I'm not sure what you're complaining about. You know, I've done this before. I know how it's done, you know." So,
Well, it's amazing. Every entrepreneur has different views. And as I said, now it's like, and everyone has their insights. That's the thing. That's why, like, we talk about people on the show. We actually get insights. But there's so many people that they just, like, we talk about this all the time. They automatically build a website and they do this and this when they're not defined of what they want. They're not exactly sure what their company is, but they want to have a business card. Which I'm gonna tell you something, man. Well, John, you don't even have a business card. You have that, like, it's a portfolio that you're not gonna give to people. It's very cool. It's a photographer. But I'm gonna tell you something. These people who give a business card, okay, here's what a business card looks like. It's this size. It's this size. Don't give me a freaking square or a platypus or one of those things that open up, because you do a stack of business cards that thing opens up and all the business cards slide off. And as soon as someone gives me a square because they think they're being so hip, you're not being hip. It's so trite. You're trying to be hip. I throw that shit right in the trash. I'm like, just give me a business card. I don't need a, yeah, I don't need that. But people just do that. They get this business card and they think, oh, it's like the scene in American Psycho when they're all feeling the business cards and they're like, oh, this is, teardrop, whatever. It's like, just get to know what you're going to do. That's like you learn what you're going to do and have your log line, as we say in Hollywood, John, log line, a pitch. Have your pitch. You need two sentences. That's it. Like when I worked for Coit, I said, I work for Coit Cleaning and Restoration. We do water fire, damage fire, blah, 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 dryer vents, this. That's it. That's all you need to know. When people go on and you get in these Zoom meetings and they're going on, it's like, dude, you shut up. Like, no one's going to do business with you because you're so self-absorbed. We told you to do 30 seconds. You're doing 5 minutes on banking. We know what bankers do. Okay. And you're boring as shit and you're falling asleep. That happens. Someone goes, why isn't this person ever on the Coop Tank? I said, because they're boring as shit and they won't listen to anybody. So I think entrepreneurs need to get focused on what they're doing. They got to focus like both you guys do. John, John Cruise, you knew you wanted to do photography, but you knew you had to have to do other stuff to start. And John, you've been doing so much stuff but you've always been focused. And I think sometimes people, they like the grandiose idea of saying, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like comedians. They do 2 open mics. I'm a comedian. No, you aren't. You did 2 open mics.
But when I have branding clients, that's why I started doing consulting services as an add-on, because like they would come to me for photos. I'm like, what are the photos meant to say? And then they spout all these words that like they heard on a podcast somewhere. I'm like, I went to business school and I know what all those words mean, and they don't mean anything in that word. So and it's like when I'm in a networking event, one of the questions when I meet somebody new, I always ask everybody, who's a good introduction for you? Because that gives me insight into who can I connect you with that might help your business. And if they say something like anyone, you don't have a business. Like you're not a business yet. Like because you need to know who you're talking to when you're putting your product out into the world. And even though things can be generalized, like Nike has a target audience, even though lots of people wear Nike, but they have a target audience, and that's what their marketing's for, and product lines and things like that. And if you're not there yet, you don't have a brand story. And if you don't have a brand story, you're not going to last long because nobody's going to remember you.
so John, you know, most entrepreneurs have uh, gone through some form of lawsuits, depending on how long they've been around. Have you ended up in a lawsuit related to your business, or uh,
Yeah, I'm going to
you come
knock
out
on some
unscathed?
wood.
Here, I'll
I
knock
don't want
on
you to
wood for
jinx me
you.
now.
Yeah, I'll knock on wood for you. Yeah, it's interesting because they say the average entrepreneur through the life of their business has about 7 lawsuits. But the interesting thing about that to me is only 1% of the population are real entrepreneurs, meaning business owners, right? So that's a lot of lawsuits for such a small percentage of people.
I can see also it may be a lawsuit where you hire someone to do your website and they don't do it. So you sue them. or you hire someone to do this kind of marketing and they don't do it. It's not all employee. I know, John, you deal with a lot of employee driven, but I think there's a lot of things. I hear stories all the time. Someone hires someone, they meet them, they do the website, person hijacks the website, they lose this money, they take them to civil court. I
Yeah.
hear horror stories all the time, and it's weird because unfortunately, if you're newer in business and you don't really know a lot of people, you go for the smoke and mirrors. And a lot of times the smoke and mirrors are people who are just pieces of shit.
There's definitely that, like, fraudulent activity. But like, say for me, for a photographer, right? So I have insurance for when I'm on site, right? Because people can sue me if they get hurt during a session. Like, that's a thing that could happen. It's not something that has happened, but let's say, we're doing something and they get hurt. There's a possibility that they would sue me for the insurance money for that moment. Like, that's a thing that could happen. And so that's why I have insurance for those things.
Yeah, that's I'm a big believer in insurance and the not for everything, but yeah, especially to for business owners. The interesting thing when you were saying that you could go on someone's property and they could sue you, uh, I think the bigger risk is the other way around in most circumstances, right? Because people come on your property to do some sort of work or whatever, and then it doesn't take much to get injured, uh, you know, fell down some stairs, whatever it is. And a lot of times, some of the smaller business people, like, I don't know, a handyman, let's say, if a handyman's injured, there's no money coming in, right? Because he needs his body to function to make money. And most people have homeowners insurance, those are easy lawsuits, right? Uh, Steve, what you were saying about, hey, you paid the guy some money to build your website and then he didn't do it. Those are all small claims. Those are less likely because most lawyers aren't going to take those on contingency because the money is not enough. And that if you pay a lawyer to do that, let's say it's a high end website, 20K, right? Well, a lawyer will burn through 20K in no time. Yeah, at the usual hourly rate. So it's not going to be worth it for you, right? So a lot of these types of claims, uh, either end up in small claims or they just end up, where the person just lets it go because the value just isn't there. Their time is worth more than whatever that website cost. I get calls like that all the time, mostly from friends and family. Hey, somebody didn't finish my stairs. Okay. Like, I can't do anything about it. It's like, I love you. You're my family member, but I can't spend all these hours suing some guy that will never collect from. The reason why he didn't finish your stairs is because he probably ran out of money, probably used your money for his life and then ran out of money for the materials.
It's crazy. So anyway, it's about time to wrap up. And we always ask this, John Cruise. What's funny, real quick about the suing? I saw this great. There's a show called Squatters. It's on Netflix, and there is a woman. They call her the parasite of Malibu. Okay, so I get a message from this girl I know who listens to my show, and she says, "Hey, have you seen this show on Facebook?" I go, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "Remember that girl from Malibu?" "Oh, yeah." She goes, "You're friends with her on Facebook." I go, "What?" So look, she sat there because she said, "I always look up these people." And this lady would go in and they couldn't get her out because of squatting rights. Turns out I'm friends with her and we have like 70 mutual friends. But they were saying, like, one guy just said, nothing's going to happen in court. He just gave her $3,500 and said, "Here, go off." So that's like you said, John, so John, Cruz, we always ask, give some insight to young entrepreneurs or people who are starting a new profession because you started older. You didn't start right off the bat. What advice would you give them about becoming an entrepreneur?
I think I'm going to go back to the beginning. I think that, like, in the day and age of social media, I think people don't realize how important personal connections are and building a network that's going to, like, help your business. Like, the idea that anybody is like, nobody is truly self-made. Everybody got there from help with others. And so I think that, like, you have to get out into the world. Um, the first thing you do, once you have your idea figured out, start telling people about it, and don't be afraid to, like, and don't hide behind a social media post. Go out into the world and talk to another human being about what you're doing, and then see where you can go with that. I think that that's something that I think that, like, people have gotten very comfortable with just being on the screens, and that's not where real connections happen anymore. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. John, you got any input about that?
Yeah, since we've talked a lot about networking and it brought me back to my networking days, even though it's been a really, really long time. Uh, a piece of advice that someone gave me that changed the results I got from networking, because I would spend a lot of time just meeting people and having drinks and nothing ever came out of it, right? Um, so networking in America is, hi, how are you? I'm John. What can you do for me? Oh, nothing. See you later, right? That's kind of how Americans network. A friend of mine that came back from China said they build relationships with people that they like and then get exposed to those people's networks. So even if that particular person uh, can't further your business, if you make them your ally, that's more people marketing for you. And once I learned that trick or that philosophy on networking, I had a lot more referrals. I had a lot more, hey, my friend just told me this happened. Is this something you can help him with? And even if I couldn't help the friend, I would say, no, that's not my area, but let me talk to him. Maybe I can point him in the right direction. And then I would talk with them, give them advice like, hey, that's a bankruptcy issue. It's not for me, but here's a list of bankruptcy attorneys, right? And then that person would then say nice things about me behind my back and get me more referrals. So that was a much better way of doing it than the American version of trying to figure out as quickly as you can if this person could do something for you. And if they can't, moving on.
That's awesome. Well, this has been great. And I network with John Fogram. If you're ever in Philly, me and John Cruise will take you to this little place called Oscars. It's this dive bar. It's like in a nice area of Philly, but it's just like this dive bar that takes cash and is beat up. And they sell the traditional Citywide stuff for $5. The Philadelphia Citywide is a 12-ounce can of beer that you can get Narragansett or like Nat Bush Natural Light or whatever, and a shot for $5. It's known as a Citywide because all the bars in Philly used to do that, but now they get all fancy. They do one for $9, but it's like ship beer, ship booze. And we were in that crowd, and actually, me and John talked to these people, and we referred them about referrals to a lawyer, to a real estate person, a realtor. So you're right, you can network anywhere, but it's right. You have to get people to like you and take them under your wing. So anyway, so John Cruz, how can people get in touch with you?
You can follow me on social. It's John_Cruise on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm John Cruise on LinkedIn. My website is johncruise.com. Connect. Happy to have a conversation with.
People, you can check me out at coopertalk.net. I have a bunch of episodes up there. You can email me at coopertalk.net. You can go to the YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music and all that good stuff, and then follow Lawsuits and Lessons. But you even get some good, this is stuff you'd hear in college business class, but you're getting it firsthand from people who've gone out and tried it and had failures and been sued. John can tell you great stories about that. John Fogerholm about, lawsuits he's had. So anyway, so do that. And John, what's your final word?
Well, first, John C., thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on. I don't know when I'll be in Philly again, but I'll definitely want to come in and come see Steve. So I'll take you guys up on that offer. I don't know that I'll do the cheap beer and shot thing, but I'd love to hang out at that bar. And Steve, thanks again. You're always a great host. And to everybody out there, thank you for watching. We hope to see you here next week and be productive.
Have a great night, people. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.